All right, guys, we have one more discussion that we want to get to, and I'm very excited about this one. If you watched the Super Bowl last night, you noticed it was history-making for the first time ever. Two black quarterbacks starting in the big game. Our 24/7 sports writer, Xavier Handy Hamilton, actually, you recently published a piece all about just overall the development of the black quarterback. He says that it's not a coincidence that we had the history this year. It's actually a result of circumstance. He presented some pretty cool facts, too. He said, in the NFL, 5 black quarterbacks started a playoff game this year, whereas in 2018, just 5 black quarterbacks started in week 1. So he kind of argues, though, that it's almost a trickle-up effect, that it starts from recruiting. And so here at 24/7 Sports, we love to talk about recruiting. Get this, 10, you're looking at them right now, of the top 25 quarterbacks in the 2023 class are black. That's double the amount from last year. Carl, you hear me say that, and you think what?
I think that we've made some changes in the right direction. It was a time years ago where if you were a black athletic guy that played the quarterback position, you would most likely be moved to receiver or defensive back, specifically if you got beat out early in your career. So what we've had here lately is patience in developing the toughest position to play in football. So it was almost going to be a guarantee. I can go way back to Bobby Newsome and Eric Crouch at Nebraska. If you got beat out at the quarterback position and you were black and you were athletic, you were going to be asked to change positions almost immediately. You weren't going to be given seasons and springs to develop as a passer, to develop as a game. And every quarterback needs that opportunity. And so now, guys, more coaches have went to systems where you want your best athlete at quarterback. So that's helped the black quarterback, and it's helped them improve as passers. And so now it's not the stigma that it used to be in terms of, well, he's not smart enough. He's looking to run too much. Now everybody's looking for a quarterback that can run. Now everybody has simplified their systems. So there's not the stigma there, even though there were a lot of black quarterbacks in the past who could have learned any system that you put in front of them, but they weren't given the opportunity. Now you're seeing guys get that opportunity, and it was amazing to see Mahomes and Jalen Hurts start in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I just go back to what, I remember being a kid and watching the Super Bowl, Washington Redskins versus the Denver Broncos. And look, I didn't care about the Redskins whatsoever, but I was rooting for Doug Williams because he changed the way I think people saw what the black quarterback was able to do by winning that Super Bowl. And look, it took obviously decades later for it to happen again, but it's kind of become a non-story, to be honest with you. I don't even remember having this conversation when Russell Wilson won it about a decade ago. But I think what it's also shown is the way that the quarterback position has changed, not just in the NFL, but college on down to high school. The days of even Doug Williams would not be seen the same as a quarterback. And now, obviously, the guy's got skill off the charts. But if you are a guy who's not super mobile, if you're a guy who's got to stand in the pocket and just deliver and you can't really do a whole lot else, you're kind of a thing of the past. Because as a former defensive coordinator, you just do not put the same type of pressure on me. You go back to Patrick Mahomes last night, pressure, everything breaks down on a bum ankle, is able to run for a 20, 30-yard scamper, and how that changed the game. What the quarterback position is asked to do now, whether you're talking the RPO game or even taking that out of the equation and just allowing to extend plays with your feet, I think all those things has led to coaches and coordinators and everybody saying, look, we've got to find a guy who can do this. And I don't really care what color he is, because if we don't get this done, I'm going to be standing on the street shaking a cup to feed my family. And so I think all those things put together has put us in this situation. I'm glad that we saw what we saw last night. And I'm even looking more further into the future, where this is honestly a non-story. And when you look at, I think, Xavier's conversation or that article that he had, I think pretty soon we're getting to the point now, 5 black quarterbacks have won the Heisman Trophy since 2013. When in the previous, whatever it was, 24 years, there were 5 total. And so I just think it's gotten to the point now where it's not even a conversation, and I'm actually looking forward to it.
I love that you asked that too, because I'm seeing some comments too, that race is really a charged issue, and especially in the comments right now, everybody's saying, why are we talking about this? Why is this a discussion? And they're saying that race shouldn't matter when it comes to talking about the quarterback position. Carl, what's your response to that?
It shouldn't, but it has, and what Nigel has said is correct. I'm glad we're getting to a point where it's not the question that it used to be, but it was very much an issue for a while. I was a high school coach for a long time, and I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different coaches about the quarterback position and the way it was evaluated and the way that it was looked at. It has changed tremendously. I also think guys like Yogi Roth, guys like Trent Dilfer, who did a great job with Elite 11, they have started from a prospect standpoint, started making black quarterbacking a non-issue too, because those were two guys that really just got into, was the kid good enough to play the position or not? And as those things started to transpire, we have been in a better position in terms of the guys who are getting the opportunity to play quarterback.
Yeah, and Emily, if I can add to it, I think 24/7 has had something to do with it, because I remember the days of the dual threat. There's the dual threat guy, and then there's the pro style guy. Well, the pro style guy was going to the USCs and the Penn States, and the dual threat guy was probably going to go to the Nebraskas and never get a chance to play in the pros again. The moment we stopped looking at it that way and just said, look, who can play quarterback, period, whatever they're being asked to do, I think it also just shaped a lot of those conversations. And again, I think the rise of 7-on-7 football has changed things, because a lot of black quarterbacks coming out of black neighborhoods where maybe they weren't getting the same type of training. Well, now those guys are getting year-round training. They're going to 7-on-7 tournaments in different parts of the country where they're being asked to recognize coverage, deliver the football on time, all those things, which has helped their development for when they got on to college and then eventually the NFL. So all these things were a culmination. We still have to talk about it, because it's not just a thing of the past. It's still here. But eventually, as those barriers continue to break down, then it becomes a non-conversation.
I think it's very healthy that we've eliminated terms like dual threat quarterback, because it certainly created a stigma around who plays those positions. And it's great that we're getting to a point where the conversation isn't as necessary as it once was, but I would argue it's still very necessary. We're not that far removed from respected NFL people saying Lamar Jackson should play wide receiver coming into the NFL draft. Lamar Jackson was one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen in person on the college level. He's a Heisman Trophy winner for a reason. The idea that people were discussing that is absurd. And I don't think you would have had that conversation about a white quarterback. So I think it's important to keep having these conversations. I thought Xavier wrote an excellent piece. And we also just, in general, have an issue with decision makers in these positions not being people of color. I think there's only 2 minority NFL owners. I think there's only a handful of minority NFL GMs on the college level. We have fewer black coaches heading into 2023 than we did in 2022. And this is all a trickle-down effect. We're seeing more black quarterbacks, which is great. We should see more black quarterbacks in these positions, but until the system itself changes around it, it's always going to be a problem. So I think it's an important conversation to be had, certainly.
Yeah, Carl, along those lines, from your perspective, where is there room for growth?
Well, there's room for growth and just continuing to develop the position. Chris brought up a great point when he talked about Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was also coached by Bobby Petrino, who's one of the legendary offensive coaches. So it's just about him getting the opportunity to be developed. But if you also look at it, I'm very close with guys who are on the staff at Louisville during that time. And when Lamar was a freshman, they did have him work out as a punt returner because they were trying to get his explosiveness on the field. And his mom got very active in that situation that he was only going to play quarterback. So some of those things are important. But his mom gets a lot of flack now in the NFL because she handles his contract stuff and he doesn't have a traditional agent. So some of those things behind the scenes in terms of the way that guys get help and that situation gets dealt with is also important. But I think the most important thing when you talk about decision makers is, does somebody feel like there's pressure that if he goes with a black quarterback and it doesn't work, does he feel more pressure than if he went with a more traditional quarterback in terms of what it looks like to other people? Is he going to get more grace in that? And I think that that's a conversation that always comes into play. Guys have to keep developing. And I would tell a quarterback, whether you were black or white, if you're going to play in the highest level of football, you have to be able to drop back and complete passes. And if you can't do that, they're going to be looking to move you as soon as they can.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, and I love that you brought that up, Carl, because ultimately it's about your performance on the field, and we understand that. But the thing that I'm actually looking forward to, Emily, is you look at a lot of these, let's just look at the Super Bowl last night, right? Sirianni, former quarterback, Division III level, moves his way up, becomes a coordinator. Shane Steichen, as a kid, I recruited. This is how old I am. I recruited him out of Oak Ridge High School,
way.
and now he's a offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. That pipeline that you were a high-level quarterback, moved up, and now once your playing career is over, hey, you want to coach, son? Because we think you have something. Well, now as you're seeing more of these black quarterbacks who are going on and being successful at the college and now professional level, how many of them are going to become the next Byron Leftwich, moving up into the ranks, becoming NFL coordinators, and now having a chance to be the next NFL head coach because of how they've moved up the ranks, because of being in that position where you had to understand everybody getting lined up. You had to be the leader. You had to make the calls. You had to make the checks. You had to understand defense and all the things that a quarterback's asked to do. So I'm really looking forward to hopefully some of the conversations we're having about coaching as well, and on into the management levels. You see the John Lynch's of the world and things like that, where because of this adaptation, because of what we're seeing in the growth of the black quarterback, actually leading to some of those things that we're seeing off the field, the decision makers of head coaches, general managers, because those guys have continued to move on in their careers because we have a much higher supply of guys who've done it at a high level. So I'm looking forward to hopefully 10, 15 years from now, we're not even having conversations about black head coaches because we're seeing guys like go down the list, the Russell Wilsons go on, guys that we watched last night, maybe moving on into coaching.
Emily, everything is about our personal stigmas, because just like you look at a Lamar Jackson, who's a great athlete, we have to fight to keep him from getting his position moved. I coached a kid named Aquill Glass that was 2-time SWAC Offensive Player of the Year and broke pretty much every record in that league. I coached him in high school, and he threw in front of 44 Division I college coaches one day, and they were concerned because he wasn't a great runner. So in that case, the fact that he was a black 6'5" quarterback who could make all the throws, but he wasn't seen as an elite speed guy, that made people scratch their head. Well, wait a minute, you don't mean he can run? And that was just in 2016 when he came out of high school. So everything is about your perception. Everything is about the way you see it and the way you look at it. And the best way for people to deal with prejudice or biasness is for them to address it in themselves first, because how you feel in yourself is going to be what you outwardly deliver when you're evaluating guys.